Hey everyone, thanks for joining again. Today I am speaking with Rahman. Faye is an ex-Muslim. She's an activist on ex-Muslim issues. Um, I don't want to say specifically, but I see a lot like on the hijab and women's rights. Faye also works for Faithless Hijabi, and she's a co-host on the Out of the Fold podcast. Hi Faye, thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I was hoping we could start. If you could just give a little bit of your background. I know I mentioned you're an ex-Muslim, but if it's, if you came from a Shia background, Sunni background, if you could go into that a bit.
Okay, so I come from a bit of a mixed background. My family originally are from Bangladesh, and when I was really young, they actually weren't practicing Muslims at all. Like some of them didn't wear hijab. My father, for example, didn't really pray regularly. He only prayed in Ramadan. It was when I was around 11 years old when my father started to get quite religious, and the family kind of followed suit. And he joined a group called the Tablighi Jamaat, who have a focus on preaching and guiding people to the religion. And when I was about 14, we became more religious and we joined a more Salafi school of thought in that, and that's all within Sunni Islam.
Okay. And how long ago did you become an apostate? How long ago did you stop believing? Like, what was that process like?
I came out last year in October, so I identified as a non-religious person last year, but I've been an apostate since 2017. Um, so my experience with that was it was difficult because I wanted to believe. I was quite devout before I left. I just couldn't reconcile my ideas about God and a lot of the theological things within Islam, and I just couldn't believe that the God of Islam in his nature was very contradictory to how he described himself, and I couldn't accept that as
Okay.
something worthy of worship.
Now, like I mentioned, you do a lot of advocacy. I don't specifically want to say against the hijab. I mean, you can use those words, but you're more for the way I see it, anyways. It's you're more for liberating the women so that they actually have a choice. Like you're not sitting there saying, okay, rip all the hijabs off people's heads and burn them all or anything like that.
I'm very much an individualist. I don't really care if people remain Muslims because they want to, but I'm all about individual choice as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. My main sort of goal by promoting this activism, well, through this activism, is to normalize leaving Islam. So, from my experience, after I left Islam and after I, no longer wanted to partake in the traditions of like arranged marriage and things like that, my family completely disowned me. They wanted nothing to do with me. And I want to stop from happening. I want to normalize everyone's experience of just choosing however they want to think.
Okay. I want to just get back to that for in a minute, but I just wanted to speak to you about the Tablighi Jamaat. Now,
Hmm.
is because I mean I've read about Tablighi. I mean we have some in Montreal. Um, I don't think it's as extensive as it is in Europe. And I've never heard of like the group Tablighi Jamaat here. But I mean, are they associated with the Tablighi? So it's kind of like evangelical. Like if you would, if you have evangelical Christianity, that's kind of what like the Tablighis are to Islam. Um,
They they directly correlate Jehovah's Witnesses. They are Jehovah's Witnesses. They're just Muslims.
okay, so all
They
right,
go door to door. They preach. That is their thing.
all right, okay. I mean, evangelicals. That's kind of in the name. Like you go out and evangelize the good word,
Yeah.
right? So when you said they were like Jehovah's Witnesses, I thought they were like even a little bit. They had how Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, they're not quite Christian, but they got some really far out ideas. So I thought, maybe the Tabligis went even
Uh,
further out.
well, Tablighis, some of them do have quite extreme ideas.
Uh,
But they have their I think in India they have a different name. They're called the Deobandis.
okay.
Um, there are definitely branches within, but their main thing is that they go door to door. They go to different countries. They just spread Islam.
Okay. Um, okay. So getting back to what you'd been speaking of earlier, like the normalizing
Yeah,
coming out as an apostate. I don't know about the UK as much, but at least in North America, you are seeing, there's been conferences by a group called ISNA, so the um, Islamic Association of North America. And
right.
a couple of the themes of the conferences were specifically how to stop apostasy. So, a
Mm,
few years back, they would just say, oh, no, there's no such thing as ex Muslim people don't leave. Now
mm,
they're actually spending
ignore.
time, yeah, acknowledging it, but not only acknowledging it as a threat and as something to counter, right? Um, is there things like that going on in Great Britain? Like, is it at least admitted, or is it still kind of we don't
Um,
want to talk about it, it doesn't exist, or
the closest thing I've seen on that, we have some, I would say, trophied da'is or people who spread the religion, who do a lot of da'wah on the streets. We have a lot of trophied ones. One of them is called Da'wah Man, the other one's called Ali Dawah. And it's, yeah, they're very, very derivative.
yeah.
Um, and from what I can see, they don't really acknowledge it as something that people actually choose. They put it down to like emotional choices or whatever. But not to the extent. I've never seen a lecture to stop apostasy. There have definitely been people talking about it, um, but not in the. I don't. I feel like they're just talking about it to discourage it. Like they sort of display us as very emotional, depressed emo kids that want to rebel against our parents, kind of thing.
Okay, um, like to me that's a bit odd. Just because, like I said, I'd never heard about anything like that in the UK. Because I mean, I see that ex-Muslims. I don't want to say they're more vocal, but I think it's a little bit more organized, and there's a lot more in the UK than there would be in North America. I mean, there's groups like ex-Muslims in North America. There's another group that's called Muslimish, which is ex and reform questioning Muslims.
Right.
But I mean, in the UK, I see a lot more, and I see. Like I said, I mean,
Well, we have the Council of Ex-Muslims. We have Faith to Faithless. Oh, yeah, Faith to Faithless. I'm not really aware of any others.
yeah, there was, I think, like a specific London group as well. But I'm just also saying, like, it's not specifically maybe just in those groups, but a large number of people are speaking out. I mean, I know Quilliam isn't necessarily an ex-Muslim group, but they want to do reform. They're
Yeah.
anti-extremism. You also have a lot of like secular societies and humanist societies, which I mean, I know we have them. There's some in the States and Canada, but for some reason, I was thinking also because of a larger population of Muslims in the UK than there are in North America, you would have
So
more apostates.
there are certainly more Muslims in the UK than there are in the US. Also, the attitude of Muslims here in the UK are very, very different to those in the US. Um, and I don't know if you want me to get into the sort of the nitty-gritty of that, but the type of Muslim is very, very different here than that of the US. US is also a much larger country, as compared to our tiny little island. So it I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. No. I mean, okay. We can talk about that because that's actually kind of interesting because I've kind of discussed this myself before. To get into North America, so to get into Canada or the United States, um, I mean, Mexico is technically North America, but I don't see people going there. Um, it requires funds. It requires a bit of wherewithal, right? You can't just
Yeah,
get into Europe and then go over to France and take a ferry over to the UK. I mean, I realize the UK is still an island and it's not attached to Europe, but it's much easier to get into the UK than it is to get into North
yeah.
America. Then
Well,
also with the UK, it was the after World War II when they brought in all the people from South Asia, right? And then
yeah.
generational thing going on.
Yeah. So with the US, the Muslim population there are mainly there due to they're quite rich families. They're quite well off. They came there for business. Whereas with the UK, because the UK owned had an empire at one point, through the Commonwealth, we had a lot of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent and other African countries that we had, a hold on, and Arab nations that we had a hold on. So we had a lot of immigrants from there, and they're not necessarily from very well-off families. They came here to have a better life. So what happened with that is that a lot of Muslims that came here didn't really integrate with the British society very well, and they created not necessarily gated communities, but very closed communities. So if you come to London, for example, you'll see all manner of people, all colors, all creeds, everything. You'll find a good mix of people, but you'll also find that people of similar backgrounds will stick to the same people. They won't necessarily integrate as well as people in the US might. And I know I'm making very broad generalizations, but it's just something that has been observed quite recently. Um,
Yeah, okay. On the integration thing, again, I think there's a difference also. I think there's three different stories if you want to talk about this. There's the UK, there's Canada, and then there's the United States. I think Canada is somewhere between the two. The United States had the model of the melting pot, which was here is the American identity. Everyone's welcome to come here, but you must take this on. So there wasn't this push for multiculturalism, which I think is multiculturalism is inherent, like ghettoization is inherent to multiculturalism. Whereas if you have the melting pot idea, here is the identity, you are welcome to come here, you're welcome to join, take on this identity. And so that immigrants coming now will have taken on that identity by the time, more immigrants come in a generation later, let's just say, right? It's
right.
you're always, whereas the multiculturalism thing, all cultures are equal, we should value all cultures. And I'm not saying that the melting pot doesn't value other cultures and other values, but the multiculturalism thing it made it so hard to criticize something from another culture. And then I think in the UK, because it had been going on for longer than it has been going on in Canada, and that ghettoization might have been a mutual thing. I'm not claiming racism or anything like that, but people were like, okay, we're bringing these working class folk. We don't want them to be in our neighborhood, so we'll build them a neighborhood over there, type of thing. I don't know. I wasn't there. And I haven't studied enough but that might have been part of it as well. But so I think that's like Canada's kind of in between. There are very ghettoized neighborhoods, especially in a place like Toronto. Montreal has them. Vancouver has them.
Yeah.
And I've been in the UK, and I've seen that. I've seen different neighborhoods, and then I've seen the integration thing, especially with I have family in Birmingham, and one of my cousins, her and her husband own this huge law firm. They hire about 100 lawyers, yet they talk about how they're not able to fit into society, and it's nothing they've done is wrong. It's always the fault of it's the white British who hold us back, and I don't see how they can say they're being held back. You own a law firm. You are engaging 100 lawyers working for you, plus who knows how many other people. Like, it doesn't seem like they were held back to me anyways.
Yeah. I don't know, to be honest. In my family, we would always complain about the British having a hold on everything, even though we were in their country. But I've never personally had a problem integrating, but there are people who will seek out these communities which create their own little subcultures. For example, we have a lot of different types of mosques now. We have Pakistani mosques where the majority will be Pakistani people. We have Somali mosques where the majority will be Somali people. We have Arab mosques where the majority will be Arab people. And it's very racially divided, and if it's not racially divided, then it's very sectarian. They'll have different groups of Muslims gathering at one mosque, and then and that's why you always see fights and arguments around Ramadan, which is now coming up, about the moon sighting, and people will be fighting and complaining about that. And it's just this refusal, even amongst Muslims, to just integrate and just live with each other peacefully. Peacefully in the sense that it's, there's no sort of backhandedness and no talking about other people's mosques and other people's cultures that they can't even sort of assimilate with themselves.
Yeah, I mean that's okay. That's a hypocrisy I see a lot.
Mm,
They talk about the ulema and oh, Muslims are brothers and sisters, but yet that Pakistanis have their own mosques. I mean, I have family in India and Pakistan, and I have some members of my family who, you know, oh, they're Pakistani and they're scum. And I'm like, well, they're your family. You say that about them as well. They're like, oh, they're Pakistani and they're scum. So, two groups of Muslims, both Sunni, both, like I said, in a family, but because of some arbitrary border, they hate each other.
yeah.
It's
Yep.
ridiculous. Okay, getting back to the integration thing for a second. Just because I've looked at studies and I've looked at reports, but I don't live there.
Yeah.
They talk about how you know immigrants from the West Indies or even from let's say from India, like the Sikhs and the Hindus, are better at integrating than the Muslim immigrants. Like, do you notice that? Is it, or is that just someone pushing a certain viewpoint or something?
From what I see, yeah, the see, I don't really know what to attribute it to, though. Is it the Islam that's not integrating them, or is it because there's like this residue pride that they're holding because of Islam? I don't know. From what I've seen, people from the West Indies and Hindu Indians, do tend to integrate a lot better than either first generation or second generation Muslims.
Um, okay, because I want to stick on this integration thing because this is one of the things I've argued about that uh, if I'm all for immigration,
Yeah,
but it has to be vetted. It has to be within reason. You can't just say open the doors, let everyone in. But I always said one of the things about immigration though is, and it shouldn't just be for immigrants. It should be for all citizens. It's the government has you have rights that the government affords you, but you also have responsibilities and obligations. And I think integration is one of them for if you want to immigrate somewhere,
yeah,
you know,
completely agree.
you should try to integrate. I'm not saying forget your whole lifestyle, but the integration thing again with I started seeing it in Canada a little bit because I kind of saw the evolution here. When we arrived in Montreal in '75, I believe there was only one mosque, and it was shared between the Sunni and the Shia. Then it separated. Then you had a Sunni mosque and Shia mosques, and then you started getting more mosques of each kind. So people who came from South Asia, and I can only speak to South Asia. I can't really speak so much for people from the Middle East or Africa or anything like that. Um,
Hmm.
like my parents had a very very relaxed version of Islam. We moved here in '75, right? So they weren't that extreme. I don't think there was much extremism. Maybe more so in Pakistan and in India because my mom grew up in Karachi, my dad grew up in India in Hyderabad,
Yeah,
and so
Pakistan is a little crazier than
yeah.
India.
But again, my mom was in college in the '60s. My parents got married in '67. So it's not like I still don't think it was as extreme then because I see pictures of my mom and her friends, and they're all in. Not one of them is wearing a hijab. They're all in like the the kurta pajamas, the shalwar
Yeah,
kameez, like they're wearing those. They're trying to all look fashionable in sunglasses and stuff.
I
But
have pictures of my mom like that.
but then as they started going to mosques, as more and more mosques started being built, and as again, this started I guess in about the '80s when Saudi started spending more money,
Mhm.
you would start to see second generation being a little bit more strident than the first generation.
Well, see, here in the 80s, it wasn't as I don't think it changed in the 80s. For us, it was definitely after the 9/11 attacks where people started becoming more religious because I guess they just thought that their entire culture was under attack. But to talk about the whole identity and culture thing, like even though I wasn't from a religious family originally, so when I was a little kid, I wasn't from a very, very Muslim family. They were very relaxed. They had a very like, go to the mosque every so often, you'll be fine kind of religion. Um, but even then, like my mother would only cook Indian food. We would only wear Indian clothes. Um, and it was just this separatism from everyone else. Like we couldn't share the same culture as a white person. We couldn't share the same culture as a black person. It was very, very racist in many different ways. Like one of the ways my mom used to scare some of my siblings was by saying that if you don't behave, then the black man next door is going to get you.
Okay, sorry, just on that, my grandfather used to tell me that when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
If I was misbehaving, he would say that, oh, if you don't behave, we're going to marry you off to the black girl down the street.
Yeah, it was like super racist.
Yeah.
Like she would literally just be like, "Hala beta," like it's good. He's gonna take you. He's gonna take you away. And my sister was dead scared of him for no reason. He was a lovely Nigerian, like Christian guy. Like he never hurt a fly. But my mom used to use him as like she used to. I don't know if she used to view him like that, but she used to say stuff like that. Um, and also when my grandma, one of my grandmas lives in Bangladesh. When she came here to the UK, she saw a lot of Somali people, and she would say that they all looked the same. She'd be walking around saying that, and it's just like this constant othering, and I don't know if that's just part of like Indian culture, if Indians are like that, or if it's Muslims like South Asian Muslims who are like that.
I couldn't answer that. I mean, that's because my dad was. When we first moved here, my dad, we were staying with family, and then, for a couple months until my parents got everything set up, and then my dad specifically moved us to a neighborhood that wasn't ghettoized, like where my uncles were living, and friends of theirs and friends of family was starting to be a little ghettoized neighborhood. My dad said, no, I want my family to integrate. I left India to come to Canada, not to a little India. So maybe that was because of my dad. But, and then at that point it was just, South Asian. So it was Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, all kind of living together because they could do we're from India, and they weren't large enough on their own to form, separate neighborhoods. But as it progressed, then you did have some divisions in there. But I still think like the South Asian neighborhoods, except for maybe the Indian and the Pakistani, but again, that depends on how long they've been here. They'll not mix too much.
Well, you might know in London we have a huge Bengali community that lives in the east of London, and one of the reasons why my grandfather probably couldn't integrate, I don't know if this was the reason, but I'm guessing this is the reason. And my grandfather brought my father's side of the family here. And my father and his siblings were first generation immigrants here, and the reason why my grandfather couldn't integrate with the other Bengalis and live in a Bengali ghettoized area was because he had sought asylum here in England because he was a fugitive in Bangladesh. So he had for all intents and purposes, did not want to integrate with other Bengalis. He just wanted to sort of continue living his life in the UK. And for the most part, up until my father became quite religious when I turned 11, we had more or less assimilated. His side of the family had more or less assimilated. They were wearing westernized. Well, I say westernized. They were wearing like jeans and tops, and they weren't wearing any hijabs. They weren't really praying often. So it was very, very westernized up until he became religious.
Okay. Getting back to your advocacy, because we recently talked about FHFM, and you talked about like a bit about the hijab, and it's just because this thing came out on Sports Illustrated yesterday.
Yeah.
And okay, some of the
That's-
okay, like I see people freaking out on Twitter, and it's just like, okay, you know what? I'm opposed to the hijab. I think it's a stupid move. I think it's dumb. But
but it's also not a hijab.
yeah, exactly. And it's just, I mean, like, I, I can understand, being opposed to it, and I could say I'm opposed to it, and then writing something long form. It's just, I
People,
the
people,
outrage is just a bit much. I think.
people have been tweeting at me and messaging me, wanting me to say something about this, but honestly, I don't really have much to say about it. Um, I mean, if that is what Muslim women want to wear when they go to the beach or whatever, I mean, what am I gonna do? You know,
Yeah.
it's definitely. I'm not saying it's not a power. It's definitely got an agenda behind it. I'm not saying that, but it's so moot by this point. Like, it's first of all, it's not a hijab. That's not what a hijab looks like. Go to Iran. That's what a hijab looks like. And like that's just the Salafi in me that's coming out. It's just like that is not a hijab. I don't know what that is, but that is not a hijab. And the second thing is, like I don't care. It's a sports magazine somewhere that someone reads. It's just like one of the funniest things came into my head when I saw that picture. I was like, finally, Islam has learned to sell sex. Like it's finally got there, and I don't. To be honest, like I see it as a form of reform, and if that's what Muslim women are going to be wearing from like 10 years from now, it's not really an issue for me.
Yeah. Okay. That's just it. Like, I was kind of on the same page. I'm opposed to the hijab. I'm opposed to this modesty culture. I'm opposed to forcing women to wear it. But that's the thing. Like, the hijab is not just a piece of cloth. It's also an idea. The idea is to be modest.
Yeah,
And a skin tight burkini and posing, go as sexy as you
oh,
can in a skin
posing,
tight.
posing like a page three sun model,
Yeah,
basically.
and all made up, and not there's anything wrong with putting on, like, but it's just, that's all of that is so counter to what the hijab is supposed to be, and to say,
Yeah,
well, this is the hijab, but then I get, you know, I get what, maybe you're trying to modernize it, like you said, maybe it's someone's form of reform, but you know, this is not a conversation to be having on a Sports Illustrated cover, though, and it's not something, you know, and to debate this on Twitter, I think, is counterproductive.
I mean, 9 out of 10 buyers of that magazine is going to be a man. I mean,
Yeah,
what,
and it's going to be a
what do
North
you want me to say?
9 out of 10 people who buy that magazine will be probably a male, and
Yeah.
you know, and 9 out of 10 of those 9 out of 10 will probably be North American males who are more into, American football and basketball and hockey than they are into anything else.
It's not even gonna pass them. Like
Yeah,
the only reason that people are outraged by it is because people are taking pictures of it and spreading it on the internet.
yeah.
Like if it was just one of those things, like it was just in this magazine and then it died the next day, it would be nothing.
See, like, I have issue with Nike selling a sports hijab. Not so much that, okay, women who want to play sports but they want to cover their hair, they have something, that's fine. But pushing in this as this progressive thing, I have an issue. Like, if you want to sell a
Yeah.
sports hijab, sell a sports hijab, fill your boots, make some money, but don't
Doesn't
sell
even
it.
make sense. It's a
Yeah,
sports hijab.
whatever. But I mean, like I said, don't sell it promoting it as a symbol of empowerment, because it's not. And it was the same thing in the U.S. after the last Olympics. You had that
Mm.
hijabi fencer, and then you had another
Yeah.
Muslim woman who was a track runner, and the
Mm.
track runner did better in her sport than the fencer did in her sport. Yet they made
Yeah.
a big deal about this Muslim woman who was fencing because she was wearing a hijab. So is that runner a lesser Muslim, or is she worth less because she doesn't wear the hijab? That's where my issue with this kind of thing is.
It's the agenda. It's the agenda because I was the fencer was wearing a hijab and the other one wasn't, right?
Yeah.
The track runner. And that I think that's like one is more obviously Muslim than the other one. So it's very much pushing an agenda, and that's what I don't like. Um, I mean, I don't know. Like we have all these protests in Iran, and it's not. I feel like in our circles, in atheist circles, and in ex-Muslim circles, it's talked about. But in every other circle, it's nothing, you know, where people are being incarcerated. Is that the right word? Like they're being imprisoned,
Yeah, yeah,
and
incarcerated. It's fine.
sorry,
Yeah,
but they're being imprisoned and they're being hurt and they're being abused for not wearing a piece of cloth on their head outside, like any normal person should be able to. And it's just like, and it's not even news, right? But when it comes to, you know, this model wearing a hijab in a sports magazine, or this Muslim fencer, or they release a new BuzzFeed video about the hijab, it's all over the place. People are always talking about it. I feel like I feel like people should say whatever they want to say. So this hijab thing with the sports magazine and the fencing and whatever, that should be in the news. But there should also be the other side talking about the people who are being abused in the name of this piece of cloth, you know?
yeah,
Like it should be fair representation, and that's the problem, is that there isn't a fair representation for both stories.
yeah. And it's okay. That I think part of it, and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt here, even though I disagree with. Like I call it, you know, benevolent bigotry, because to me it seems like that they're coming. They want to do good. They don't want to be racist. So if we call out the hijab, are we being racist? Are we being that? And it's just like you're hurting the people you want to help. And it's you know, my best case scenario for it is calling it misplaced altruism, but to me it is bigotry. And it's, but it, you know, they're trying to be good about, they're trying to do good, but it's just wrong.
It's, you know, good intentions lead to hell sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah,
Um, and it's, I don't know. I don't really know how to counter it besides just continuing to make a bigger fuss about it. Um, with like all the people who are trying to tell me that I should be talking about this model. I mean, I don't know the person. I don't know what her thoughts were in this. I mean, I'm sure she's a model.
yeah,
So, you know, so her whole idea is against the hijab. Hijab is about covering all of that,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, I mean, for her, if that was her way of like rebelling against the system while remaining a Muslim, I mean, come on, she's doing her best. But I understand the people who are trying to say that this was like I don't know what it's called. They were just trying to virtue signal
yeah.
their way into being like progressive minded, liberal, you know.
Yeah, it's I don't get it. I mean, okay, on this same topic, this was a couple of years ago in New York City, and there was
Mm,
only a couple of people I saw talking about this in a certain way. Now there this woman who, well, woman, she was a young girl. She was, you know, senior in high school or just started college, and she was on this. She was on the subway. Then she went to the police because apparently someone tore the hijab off her head, and she filed a police report. She went home. Then
mm.
it later came out that she had lied because she lost her hijab and she was afraid of what her father was going to do.
Yeah,
And then that came out. And then I believe her father shaved her head for lying about taking off the hijab. Most of the people were like, okay, this is a hoax, blah, 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 blah. And they were, you know, first everyone was like, okay, look, oh my God, this is horrible. How could, you know, this happen? It's racism, which, you know, if it had happened, yes, it's racism. It's wrong. It shouldn't have happened. People, but then when it was a hoax, it was all, everyone was talking about the hoax. But look at this woman and look at how scared she was that she'd lost it. And
that
that
she
she,
filed a fake police report.
yeah, because she was afraid of what her father was going to do. And
Yeah.
right there, there's a story. Right there, they could have worded that in that way to maybe make people understand that, you know, even in the States, even in Canada, even in the UK, like it's not always a choice. It's not, and we should make this about the choice and forget the piece of cloth for the moment, but let's make it about the choice and let's push for that choice. You know?
Mm. I guess with the choice issue, first of all, it's very difficult. It's like identity politics. It's like with any identity politics, with race, religion, gender, sexual orientation. It's very difficult to talk about because people's emotions are there. Um, so first, bringing up the subject is becomes an issue. Second of all, I think it's very difficult to monitor choice, especially when people's families are like this, where there isn't the voiced threat of anything, but it's just there. It's like an emotional manipulation where it's just like something's going to happen if you do something. Like the year and a half where I was sort of pretending to be a Muslim when I really wasn't. I was living with family. I was really, really scared that I would lose my scarf whenever I was out, because I wouldn't wear it at work. I wouldn't wear it around friends, and I would always be looking for it on my way home. Um, and it wasn't like no anybody was going to do anything to me. It was just the fear of knowing that something was going to happen, either somebody yelling at you or worse. Like it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
okay. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
don't know. I don't know how you would monitor choice, because technically, if anybody asked me, like, when I was practicing but I was doubting if hijab was my choice, I would have said yes. But if somebody had asked me, and nobody ever did, but if somebody had asked me, would you have the choice to take this off, or what would happen if you took this off, I wouldn't have known how to answer that question.
Yeah, okay. I realize that. I mean, I've said it too. Like, how much of a choice is it if you're told? I know you weren't, but a lot of people
Yeah.
are from from a young age that if you don't wear this piece of cloth, you're not a good girl. If a girl doesn't wear it, it hurts her chance of being married. It hurts
Oh,
her
I was
brother.
told all of that.
Yeah, no, but I mean, if you're told this and indoctrinated this from a very young age,
Yeah.
it's hard to call that a choice then, right? It's you are doing this because you're told. I mean, yeah, you have the choice, but if you don't, you're going to go to hell. How much of a choice is that really, right? Like,
Yeah.
I get all that, but
I
if so,
think that I don't think that children should be put into it for
no,
sure.
no,
I think that should be stopped completely.
yeah,
I see little kids, like I started wearing it. My mum put me in a hijab when I was like 5 years old, and I had been wearing it until I was like 21. But like I hate that idea of having tiny little kids running around in headscarves, because the whole point of a headscarf is to hide your beauty from men. And what is there to hide when you're a baby, essentially?
yeah, no, that okay. I agree with you there. It should not women like young girls should not be, it should not have it on. Um, you, you're gonna have to come up with some arbitrary age. Maybe you know ideally, I guess it should be the age of majority, but if they want to start a little bit younger, maybe 16, like around the time you can drive or something. But you know,
Oh, I don't think that a lot of Muslims would sit well with that one,
no, no,
because
yeah,
girls, Islamically speaking, have to start wearing it once they start their period.
okay, I know all that, but I'm still, you know, there's a lot of things you're supposed to do Islamically, which it doesn't quite fit in with a liberal society.
I know,
Uh,
but
yeah, no,
I feel like I was talking about this on our podcast that I do with Out of the Fold, and I think that we need to wean people off slowly. So maybe make the age like 12 or something, and then slowly raise the bar.
yeah, but
But
there's
I don't know.
yeah, like again, this is there was like this is such a this is such a divisive topic because how as soon as you start talking about it, it's like how dare you tell people how dare you tell women what they can and can't wear. I'm like, I'm not, I'm talking about
We're talking about
yeah,
choice.
exactly, but it still comes because like you said, the identity politics, and it just like how dare you say this and how dare you, and it's coming on all sides, like how again, like with the Sports Illustrated thing, oh how dare you put a model, and I agree with that, like it's modesty culture. I think it's all wrong, and I don't think it's it's not something to promote, but it's not like they were ideally promoting the hijab. But yeah, it's like I think we should, like I said, start at least pushing the choice option. So
Yeah,
you know if you can, in places like Iran, at least get the criminal penalties taken away.
yeah,
If you can get those taken away, then maybe you can have the social discussion where things will change in people's homes, right?
yeah.
As long as you have that threat of jail hanging over you, it's almost
That's 100% not a choice.
yeah, and then it's almost impossible to have a reasonable discussion at that point too,
But
right?
the problem with that is that people aren't talking about that.
Oh no,
People aren't talking about the rules in Saudi Arabia and Iran and all the other Arab countries that make it compulsory for Muslim women to cover.
did you just call Iran an Arab country? Oh my God, the hate mail you're gonna get.
It's fine. I grew up with Arabs. I saw all of the hatred coming. There's loads of people who say Egyptians aren't Arabs, Tunisians aren't Arabs, Algerians aren't. I don't care. They're all, to me, they're all Arabs. They all speak the same language.
Well, no, Iranians don't. Iranians speak Persian.
Iranians don't. That's why I said Iran, Saudi Arabia, and all the other Arab countries.
Oh,
But
okay,
it's,
so yeah, yeah, no,
but
no.
I mean,
Okay, but I'm
yeah.
actually one of those people who's a stickler on the North Africa thing, just because, again, the well-meaning people from the West, it's a Western imperialization, colonization, all this. There was Arab colonization. I mean,
Yeah,
Arabs themselves,
I think
1400.
Muslims like to ignore that.
Yeah, but no, but a lot of people do. A lot of people are ignorant of that fact. Like, North Africans were basically Berbers, and if you like, okay, so Algerian, Tunisian, and Moroccan were basically Berbers, and then with the Egyptians, it was Copts and Berbers, right?
Hmm.
So those cultures were wiped out long time ago, and yes, they're all Arab-speaking countries now. And I mean, if you do a search of Arab countries, I mean, they include Somalia. How is Somalia an Arab country?
Somalia is not an Arab
No,
country.
but they include Somalia as on a list of Arab countries. It could be Arab speaking. That'll accept.
I spent like a quarter of my life with Somalians. Trust me, they're not Arabs.
Well, no, I know that, but like I said, but there you go. Like, okay, it's an Arab country. Like, no, it's not. It's just.
Well, the reason they do that, the reason that Muslims do that, is that there's a narration. I'm not sure if it's from the Prophet himself, but there's an Islamic narration that says that anyone who speaks Arab is an Arab. To anyone, a white person, a yellow person, a brown person, anyone who speaks Arabic is an Arab.
Okay, well, I'd never heard that.
Mm.
Okay, actually, just sticking with this because how I would see this in my family. Like I've gone back to India quite a bit, and it was one thing. Like my dad was always proud of the fact that his family originated in Yemen. It'd been a few generations that they were in India,
Right.
and then, but this love-hate relationship that I've seen from my family in India and Pakistan with Arabs, and especially Saudi Arabia. You know,
Hmm.
oh my God, it's the most perfect place. If we could live there, it'd be so great. We're right next to Mecca, blah 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 blah. And then look at these Arabs. They treat us so badly. And it just this love hate relationship, even in the language, that they would change. Like in Urdu, there's a couple of things like they changed before when you said goodbye, everyone would say Khudafiz. And
Hmm.
then all of a sudden in the late 80s, people started telling me I should say Allah Hafiz because Khuda is the Urdu and the Persian word for God, and Allah is the Arabic word, and we have to speak it in Arabic. And that was insane. Did you see that in like Bengali communities, or is that specifically an Indian Pakistani thing?
We, we used to say Khudafiz.
No, but I
Um,
mean like the love hate thing with the Arabs. Like, is there?
with the Arabs, not in my family. I went to a Muslim girls' school. Most of my classmates were Arabs, so there wasn't much of that. My dad actually had a lot of Arab friends. If we talk about my grandma, the lady hated everyone. Like, she hated black people, she hated Arab people, she hated white people, she hated everybody. She hated everybody but like Bengalis from her city or town. Um, and even then, she would still bitch about people from there. Um, but that's what I was saying. Like, there always seems to be this very skin color based judgments on people from South Asians, Bengalis, Pakistanis, Indians, and I'm not entirely sure why. But in terms of Arabs and what what people in my family would say after we became religious is that, like, I studied Arabic for 5 years in school, and I was considered like really good for doing that, even though I don't really know it fluently. People who said Arabic words like akhi, or which means brother, and that's how you just like talk to somebody, or ukhti for sister, or like switching out different phrases for thank you, like jazakallahu khairan, instead of just saying thank you. Um, and saying alhamdulillah and the whole spiel when somebody sneezes, like all of that. Um it it was a clear Arabicization, but then like my mum wasn't a very extroverted person for very obvious reasons. She was a Muslim lady. She just stayed at home for most of her day, but also the friends that she had were mainly Bengali people, and if not Bengali people, then Somali people, because she really liked them. But she didn't like Arabs. One, because they were in the ones that we knew were very not generous, but they would flaunt their wealth a lot, and she didn't like that. And I think that's what the grievance is that the Arabs are, and in a lot of cases, when like a South Asian Muslim meets an Arab Muslim, they're often more well off than they are, and there's some jealousy there. And that's what my mum didn't like about Arabs. In the case of my dad didn't hang out with the best of characters, honestly. Like, he thought they were really religious, but they were very obviously not very good people. But he would hang out with everyone, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Okay. The Arab thing. I remember. Okay, before we moved to Canada, so I'm in school in India, and I was in kindergarten, and it was the first week of school or so. I'm not sure the exact, but we had to pick a language class.
Yeah.
My family spoke Urdu. I would speak Urdu at home. We had a choice of an Urdu class or an Arabic class. I chose Urdu because, to me, in my little whatever 5-year-old head, that seemed logical, because we speak Urdu. I speak Urdu at home. I'm going to be writing in Urdu. I should learn how to. And then, but the Arabic class was actually a Quran class, right? They teach you Arabic by teaching the Quran. And so I get home, and then my brother asked me, like, why weren't you in? And I said, and then my mom was like, why didn't you go to that class? I'm like, well, I took Urdu classes. My parents were so pissed off. My mom comes with me to school the next day, gets me out of that class, puts me in the other one. Because I'm like, I didn't know. I'm like I said, to me, it made more sense to learn the Urdu than the Arabic.
Yeah, it does. It 100% does. It makes more sense to, like, even now. I wasted so much time in Arabic. I'm very, very good at languages, but Arabic is one of the most complicated languages. I think it's like listed as the fourth most complicated language to learn. And it was one of the things I struggled with Islam, was that if God revealed a book in any language, why would he choose Arabic? Like, what percentage of people spoke Arabic at the time? Like, maybe like 4% of the planet. And it just made no sense to me that he would do that. But also, like, the complexities of learning it and the reverence that people have for the language. Like, I don't know if people back home used to do this, but if the Quran, God forbid, touched the floor, we would have to kiss it.
Yeah, I know. There was all kinds of weird things like that. I mean, it's just.
And then we stopped doing that after we became Salafis, because we realized it wasn't a thing. We just said astaghfirullah, and then we put it back on the shelf.
But no,
really
but I mean, it's these little idiosyncrasies, and they, like a lot of religions, all religions have them. I mean, there's
I
one
would also hear stories. I would also hear stories about people going to Mecca, and like, if there was Arabic written on the floor, people would kiss it because it's such a like divine language. It shouldn't be on the floor. But really, all that's written is like directions, or the toilet. It's just a sign, and it's just ridiculous.
I don't know what they do in Dubai, because all the hotels in Dubai that I worked in Afghanistan, and whenever we left, we'd fly through Dubai. So all the hotels in Dubai had the Qibla, but they'd mark it on the ground, so on the floor of the hotel room. So, I mean,
that's actually really handy, because nobody knows what the Qibla is at any given time.
Yeah, I know. My mom used to have. I think was it my mom or my grandmother? They had a janamaz with a compass, like a Qibla compass.
Yeah, so did we, but I never knew how to use it.
Yeah, it's just. But I mean, I actually brought that up with my folks. I'm like, okay, the world is round. They're like, yes. I go, so whether you face east or west, you're eventually facing Kaaba. No, but it's true. Like, it's a globe. Technically, I guess your gaze goes off into space, but
What do people do that are directly like behind the Kaaba?
I don't
Like
know.
are directly on the other side of the world?
Yeah,
Like, do they just go in any direction? The freedom of just praying in any direction.
I'm not sure because I think it's also you walk around the Kaaba, go from east to west type of thing, right? Like at Hajj, I believe. So
I've never
it's
been to Hajj.
yeah, no,
I
but
never learned
yeah, it's
that.
one of the things. I've never been either, but it's one of the things you're supposed to do. But I believe they walk around it going in the
Walk
direction of
around it
this.
clockwise.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe it's because you're praying in the direction of the sunrise, even though Islam's not really. There's nothing in Islam to even suggest there was like any kind of sun
Well,
worship, but I
actually, during the life of the Prophet, originally they were facing Jerusalem when they prayed, and
yeah,
then they changed it halfway through when the Jews were making fun of them.
yeah, but
Um,
yeah, like that's another thing. I mean, they prayed to Jerusalem because that's that's where he went for the night journey, right? That's another thing I make fun of. It's because like he flew from was it Mecca to
well, no,
Jerusalem and then from Jerusalem to the moon, and I'm like,
I
what?
think it was more a plagiarism of the Jewish religion, and the reason why the Jews would laugh at him for that was because they were basically ripping off their religion. Um, and that's when I think they were in the middle of prayer actually when that revelation came down, in quotes, revelation came down, and they changed directions while they were praying to the Kaaba.
Whatever. That's
I don't know. It's just fairy tales. I mean,
yeah, I know. I mean, it's
but I don't actually know why they face the Kaaba because obviously if you were in Japan then you'd be facing west. So it wouldn't be the rise of the sun kind of thing.
well, I don't know. Like I've never actually looked in like in India if they face east or if they face west. Because technically, even in India, you would face west, right? But if everyone has to face in the same direction, then
Mm.
everyone would have to face east. So, like, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, it's it's so bizarre. I mean, they're talking about. I think there was a fatwa that came out recently about prayers in space. I'm like, how does that work?
You just point yourself down.
Like, no, but seriously, like, especially in zero gravity, you're floating around. Like, are you like that is the flying carpet for Christ's sake. So
I think that should be the exception for prayer. You're in space. You don't need to worship anyone. It's a no man's land.
yeah. Yeah, well, whatever. That's bizarre. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about your podcast because I'd been working on one with Nikki for a while, and I mean, it was just getting a little. The logistics of it were getting a bit hard because, yeah, because she was out in Australia and I'm here, and we were kind of doing the same thing. We were speaking to people who had left different
Yeah.
faiths. So,
Mm.
and one of the things we were trying to focus on were the similarities that all apostates face. So, I mean, if you speak with Jehovah's Witnesses,
Yeah, we kind
Mormons,
of do the same thing.
yeah. So, I mean, I've listened to a few of them. Like, how long have you guys been doing this?
Well, Cole started doing it about 6 months ago. I recently joined, like in the last 2 months.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and I don't really do the interviews with the other apostates. So we've had quite a few people from different faiths. We've had ex-Muslims, we've had ex-Jews, we've had ex-Christians, ex-Mormons, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I think we've had a few ex-Hindus as well. And they're not all atheists. Some of them have changed to a different religion. Some of them have had multiple religions. Um, and yeah, we just let them talk about their journey out of faith.
Yeah. Okay, but like I said, that's one of the things I'd always remark though is like the similarities.
Mm,
So, like one of the things that's kind of common across the board is shunning,
yeah.
and then then from there, there's different degrees of it. Like I don't know if any of the Mormons you guys have had on. I know you said you didn't specifically speak to some of the other faiths. Did they have? Because I've spoken to one ex-Mormon, and she was talking about how at one point the Mormons also had something called blood atonement, which was killing of apostates, right? So,
Oh wow.
so I was just wondering if any of the Mormons you'd spoken to had talked about
I
that.
think we've had one ex-Mormon. I actually haven't listened to that podcast. But there have been others. The shunning is definitely in there. Especially when Cole interviewed the ex-Jew,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of shunning there. There was shunning in ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because they're quite a tightly knit community, and really you're very, very dependent on them because they're like a cult. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of comparisons between other religions and Islam
Yeah, I
in
mean,
terms of the leaving.
yeah. And I mean, just getting off the religious thing for a second. I mean, there's a lot of like it's you have the religious, but then any kind of dogmatic ideology, right? So, you know, be it white supremacy, be it communism under Stalin or any other dictatorship. Now this these people who take identity and social justice to an extreme.
Yeah.
If you don't think exactly the way we do, you're out. We know. Like, okay, fine. The social justice, they're not out to kill you, but they're out to, we'll get you fired. You can't make a living. You can't live your life.
Yeah, they deplatform you. They cut you off.
And I mean, it's like this. I don't know what it is about this kind of dogmatic thinking that leads people down that road, because there's so many similarities across the board in all of them, right? It's just they're
just in different flavors.
Yeah, and it's and the thing they hate is different. Like they just aim their hatred towards something else. They all have something else that they hate or whatever, or something that they're preaching, but the mentality is the same. And I'd spoken to a couple of people, and I think Faith to Faithless might be doing this. I don't know if I'm giving anything away, but whatever. I said it would be a good idea to do instead of doing like a conference on ex-Muslims or a conference on just atheism or anything like that, but have a conference to discuss apostasy in all these faiths, and just to have the apostates talk about, okay, so like have a session on shunning, have a session on threats, have just talk about the similarities all the way across the board, to maybe
I think that would be good for gaining allies, and that'd be really good, actually.
I'm not even like this allyship thing. It's one of the things, like these social justice people, just they make me hate the language. And no, but
Well,
it just
I mean, allies in the sense that we'll have more people on our side.
yeah. To me, it was more for like, okay, the average person who doesn't know all these actual details or whatever. But if there's something like that, and you make it open to everyone, it's like, okay, look, there's all these people from all these different backgrounds talking about the things they had similar in leaving X, and maybe if the average person comes in and sees it and they're like, okay, they might be able to get it better.
Yeah.
Like I understand what you mean by getting allies, and you obviously the more people that will speak out, the better it is. Like we were talking about earlier with the people not speaking out about what's going on in Iran or Saudi Arabia or places like that. Like you need more voices, but then you have this thing of allyship where if you want to be a good man, you should give up your position so a woman can have it, or if you want to be a good white person, give up your position.
That's not what I meant at all. I didn't know that's what ally meant.
Oh,
I meant as friends.
Yeah. No, but okay, but that's just it. Like, there's this terminology that that's in social justice. They talk about this.
Social justice. So they're just like the incels. They're just way too self-righteous for their own good.
Yeah. Okay. I said that to someone just the other day. You take these people who are woke, right, and then you have the people who say they're red-pilled, and they all, and then you take converts. They're all the same thing.
They're all the same.
They want to show how good they are at Okay, I'm a convert, so I'm going to be the best. I converted to Islam and be the best Muslim in the world. I converted to social justice. I'm going to be the best, whatever.
It's just a way of trying to convince yourself that you're a good person,
Yeah,
instead of just accepting yourself.
yeah, and it's I don't know, but it's just, like I said, it's I listen to them and it's all the same, and it's at some points it's almost like kids with a new toy, right? Like, look at me,
Yeah,
look at this, look at this. I have to play with this. I have to take it out. It's all nice and shiny, and it's
that's exactly how I felt after Sinead O'Connor accepted Islam. It was
oh,
so, I was just laughing.
but
That's not gonna last.
that was also a bit sad. I mean, because
That's it.
well, for a couple of years, it's not like I follow pop culture or anything, but there'd be for a couple of years, like there had been a couple articles about her, and then that she wasn't doing well mentally,
Yeah.
and then this happened. So did someone take advantage of that? Did like
I feel like she was probably told this would be a good move.
yeah, and I don't
So Zayn Malik, around about the same time, said that he wasn't a Muslim, and people were going mental over that.
yeah. But again, that gets back to the outrage stuff. I mean, you know, people are looking for something to be pissed off about, and it's just
Yeah.
it's easy to find. Um, just a couple last things. I don't want to take up too much of your time. The work you do with Faithless Hijabi.
Yeah.
So I mean, this was started up by Zara K, right?
Yeah.
And so like I I'm a little curious about. So like when you say Faithless Hijabi, are you talking specifically about people who are apostates, and who are still not open about it, and they're wearing the hijab, or like how did that come about?
So Faithless Hijabi is all about supporting curious Muslim women. We mainly focus on women. We do talk to men a lot if if they're questioning, but our services are more towards women because our entire staff at the minute, all the volunteers are all women, and it's just the experience that we can relate to. And we also think that women have a harder time leaving religion than men do. Men can still like pass as Muslims even though they aren't practicing, whereas women it's a lot more difficult. So we take the stories of curious Muslim women or ex-Muslim women who have recently left faith or have left faith after a time, and we just share their struggle. So they write up their stories, and we edit them so that they're readable, and we publish them for public consumption so that people can understand the struggle.
Okay. Um, like I said, I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much. I just want to ask you, like, if you have anything coming up where people can get a hold of you, any last words?
I
Anything you want to
mean,
say?
I'm a very new sort of player on the whole ex-Muslim scene. I only started doing this in last year in October, and I'm still getting to grips with everything. So I'm making a lot of mistakes, and people are very quick to tell me that I'm making mistakes.
Yeah,
um,
that,
but
that doesn't change. That doesn't change at all. So
no, I know, but it's fine. I mean, I'm happy. Like I've come to accept myself as a flawed human after leaving religion. So I'm more than happy to just be like, okay, I made a mistake. I'm gonna move on with that. I do a weekly podcast with Out of the Fold, so there's that to look forward to. I do 2 videos a week on YouTube. Um, Sometimes they're kind of whatever, but most of the time they're based around Islam and my leaving it and how I'm coping with it. And yeah, I'm good friends with Zarke at the minute, so we have planned a video to do. I'm not sure when that's coming out, but I'm most easily reachable by Twitter. I've noticed that a lot of people are adding me on Facebook. Please stop doing that because I don't use my Facebook. um, but yeah, that's about it.
all right. Well, thank you again very much, and thank you everyone for listening. And I'll